Welcome everyone to Coffee and Cloud and today's session about Gen AI for Web3 on Google Cloud. As you know, we are running these sessions, the Coffee and Cloud sessions on a monthly basis, and we are posting the recordings on the Google Cloud Web3 YouTube playlist. So in case you have friends you want to share that with, the recording will be made available. And last time we covered blockchain, data, and AI. And really what we wanted to do today is build on this and cover generative AI, large language models. If you have ideas, right, for other sessions, upcoming sessions, email us at coffeeandcloud@google.com. My name is Bertrand Portier. I am part of Google Cloud Customer Engineering and the principal for Google Cloud Digital Assets. I am a member of the Google Cloud for Web3 team. And if you're in Web3, we want to enable you to build and scale faster and also using simple and secure tools and infrastructure. Now, if we get into Gen AI and start getting into our topic today, one thing we can say is that it has captured the public's attention. But if you look at what happened maybe over the last quarter, there was not a day where large language models, GPT, or generative AI was not in the news. So there is a lot of hype for sure. And interestingly for us, the hype is shifting a little bit from crypto to Gen AI. And having said that, the Web3 community really hasn't been shy about experimenting. And here you see a few early examples, for example, around Web3 security, where Coinbase used ChatGPT to perform automated ERC 20-token reviews. Falconex introduced Satoshi to assist crypto traders. Etherscan introduced Code Reader to learn more about smart contract code, and Solana Labs also introduced a plugin for real-time data and real-world transactions like token transfers. So what we wanted to do today really is take this a step further and talk about what the community is building. Specifically, we are going to cover some of the digital assets and Web3 use cases that we are helping our customers implement. So 3 things in terms of how the webinar is going to be structured today. Number 1, we spend most of our time on demos. And I know you came for something, and that we're going to do live demos today. Number 2, we'll cover use cases as opposed to just products. We'll talk about use cases that are relevant to our industry. And then number 3, we'll also provide a high-level overview of our Gen AI offerings and architecture. Last but not least, as I mentioned this already, we want to hear about your experience. We want to understand your goals and challenges with LLMs and Gen AI. So please use the Q&A or the chat to communicate with us here. All right. So the intro is out of the way. Before we get into the use cases, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Ty for the first demo.
Thanks, Bertrand. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ty Dow. I am one of the founding members of the digital asset team on Google Cloud. As an account executive, I partner with customers such as yourselves to solve business problems by adopting Google Cloud, and we also explore potential business opportunities as well. My goal today is to show you how business users can leverage Generative AI Studio to explore and test prompt design for large language models. I just need a caveat. I am not a technical person at all, but I did find Generative AI Studio to be pretty intuitive and easy to use. So why are you all here today? One of the many reasons why people are excited about generative AI is that it allows you to rapidly prototype applications to solve business problems. And with the right tools, you can experiment with new ideas in minutes instead of months. Generative AI Studio is one of those tools. It lets you quickly explore and customize generative AI models that you can then leverage in your applications on Google Cloud. So let me go and dive right in to the demo here. Let me go ahead and share my screen, make sure that you all can see it. Can we get a thumbs up if you all can see it?
Yeah, all good.
Appreciate that. So just to orient everybody, I'm logged into the Google Cloud console right now. And to get to the Generative AI Studio screen that you see right here, you press this hamburger button on the top left. I've already saved the Vertex AI tab, and under Vertex AI, you can see a number of different tools that we offer. We have dashboards, we have the model garden, which lets you leverage a number of different models depending on your different use cases. We have a workbench and different pipelines. As I mentioned, for today's demo, we're going to focus on Generative AI Studio. So let's go back to the overview. And as you can see here, Generative AI Studio gives you a number of different options to start testing prompts for the different types of use cases that you may have. So you can see we have ones for language, speech, and vision. We'll focus on language for today. When I open up the language Generative AI Studio, you can see that we have a number of different prompt examples. We have use cases for chat, if you're looking to build a customer service chatbot, for example, for retail customers that are out there. For data summarization, I think this is very valuable. I use this, as some of you have probably played with our retail version of Bard, where you can ask Bard to summarize documents or corpus of data that you feed into it. We also have classification, extraction, and then also writing and ideation. Ideation is really valuable for me as an account executive when I'm preparing for customer meetings. I can go in and ask Bard, for example, to help me create an agenda that I can share with the customer, right? So just want to differentiate that I'm using these tools today via our retail Bard offering. So let's go ahead and go in and talk about prompt engineering and prompt design. So what I've done here is I've saved a number of different prompts that I've already created. So what I'm going to do is just open one of those prompts that I have tested. And as part of this prompt, let me just orient you real quick. So you have a freeform text box here that you can enter and start testing and experimenting with different types of prompts to see what type of response back you get from the large language model. On the left-hand side, you can see here that we have a variety of different models that you can select from. And then you have the ability to configure model weights to then get different results for your model. We won't go into the details of that today, but if you have any specific questions, feel free to put that in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that we address that at the end. So with that said, my first prompt that I'm testing here are, what are the popular programming languages for Web3 developers? I'm sure as most of you are developers out there, you probably already know this answer, but for someone that's non-technical like myself, within a few seconds, you can see that the large language model has given me a response back. Solidity, Rust, JavaScript, Python, Go. I'll say that this is a pretty good response back based on some of the conversations that I've had with my customers and what are some of the languages that their engineers are using. So that was the first use case where it's more of like a Q&A style type of use case. The second example that I want to provide for you is more of a summarization. And so what I've done here is I've given the prompt of provide a summary of the text below. And this block of text that you're going to see here was taken from one of our Google Cloud blog posts that was recently published on one of the products that we recently announced, Blockchain Note Engine. So I'll go ahead and click the submit button again. You can see there's several paragraphs here that I had given it. And what it's going to do is give me a quick summary of that text that I had given it on the top there, right? So Google Cloud Blockchain Node Engine is a fully managed node hosting service that can minimize the need for node operations. So that's great. So now that I've gone in and I've done some of this initial testing, what else can I do it? How would you turn this to an engineer to say, could you build this into your development pipeline or productionalize this? So on the top right here, you can see that we have this simple button to click to view the code that's running behind the scenes. So you can give this to your engineers to then take the prompt that we had just designed and then embed this into the applications that they plan to build. So I wanted to just provide a quick demo. I think that's pretty much what we wanted to show today. So in summary, what we walked you through was Generative AI Studio. We showed you that there were a number of different examples that you can walk through and test yourself. I showed you how, from like a non-technical perspective, any business user can come in here and start experimenting with different types of prompt designs. And so I would highly encourage you to all go in and play with this solution yourself. Back to you, Bertrand.
Thank you so much, Ty. So if you could please, let me just go back now and present a little bit. What we're going to do now is get into the use cases. So I am going to talk about the first use case here, and then this first use case is what we call document search and synthesis. But this use case is where you can identify, summarize, get explanations to get a better understanding from large document sets. We see a lot of customers selecting this as the first use case for evaluating LLMs, especially because it is for internal use, right? You can apply that to an internal use case, like internal users accessing both public and private data. So with that said, and to illustrate this, I'm going to hand over to Jim. So Jim, please introduce yourself and take it away.
Thanks, Bertrand. I'll start by sharing my screen and let me know when you see it.
Maybe give a quick intro about you as well.
So I'm an AI specialist. I've been here a couple of years doing traditional AI and data science work, and then the last 6 months have been dedicated almost completely to generative AI. Do you see my screen here? You should see a pretty large block of empty space, and that's good. So what are we looking at? We're looking at a parent service called Gen App Builder, which has two main technology components. One is an info bot, which I will not be demoing. The other is enterprise search. And what's enterprise search? Enterprise search is a service meant for clients to take, host their own private content, use to search their material, most importantly, to use it as a source of grounding and truth for large language model operations. Excuse me. So the idea is that with enterprise search, we combine the advantages and lessons learned from Google search in terms of semantic search and massive capabilities of scale, along with the ability to have an integrated language model that provides additional features. And I want to walk through some of those features first in this little pre-built administrative UI. So we're looking at the preview screen. And then I'll flip over to a small custom application, because what really drives this under the covers is an API that lets you build any type of application you need where you want to search, retrieve, and potentially apply language model capabilities to the results. So I'm just going to start with a pretty search generic question. And I've got a corpus that's relatively small, maybe 20 or so documents that are in some way related to Web3, but mixed up enough so that they're not highly repetitive. So let's just do a fairly simple first search. Latest crypto, and I can't spell, so apologies for that. News about Solana. So we got a result. Where did this result come from and what's behind it? And then we'll see more of this when we go to the application. This chunk here is called the summary. That is not actually necessarily verbatim information from the text in the underlying documents. That is a summary created by the embedded large language model. It has this little annotated link here that points to the actual document used to populate that. And you can see, if you can see the far bottom of my screen, it points to a weekly news recap from July 14th, 2023. These other results are let's call them ranked by confidence level bullets or snippets from other documents that may in some way light up the semantic search engine that's behind this. From this UI, there's not a lot of control over what goes on here. I can't control the size of the summary. I can't get a lot of the details behind this. That's why eventually we'll look at the application. But let's ask another question just to give you a sense of what's going on. What is a delegated proof of stake? So I get a little more detail. My summary is a little richer. It points to two annotations telling me that to create this summary, it referenced two documents in the corpus. And you can see that there's a pretty decent summary here written in pretty natural language. Notice that I didn't have to ask or pose any specific command here in terms of what the summary should look like. There is an upcoming feature later this year where, in fact, you will be able to put in front or append to this query a preference for how you would like the summary to be formed or behave. And when I say that, I mean provide a summary that might be good for a newcomer to the Web3 world. Provide a summary for a 5-year-old. Provide a summary for a seasoned professional. And when the model sees those kinds of extra hints, it will generate a different and sometimes richer, more specific type of summary. Any questions on this? If not, I'll jump over to a small application to give you a little better view of what's kind of going on under the covers here. Okay, we'll jump over to the app. You'll notice here, pretty simple app. I don't do a lot of UI work, so this is rapid prototyping. I've got two search modes lit up over here, one called enterprise search, one called conversational search. The enterprise search button simply means call the underlying search engine as if you were just basically sitting in the user interface, but I'm providing more parameters and more requests for extended information. So let's ask a different question. So, firms engage with developers. I should be able to get away with a typo or two. Maybe not that bad of a typo, but we'll see. Again, the summary is generated by the large language model. We'll show what this has in a minute or two towards the end because this gets fairly detailed. But then you can see I got my summary. In the code, I actually asked for a summary. I said, give me a maximum of 5 sentences. I can turn that off. And I can make a few other requests. But in this case, what I want to do is switch over to a conversational search. So what happens here? When I do this now, my application in the background has taken the results of this previous query. It's taken this summary and other information that I said was hidden and not presented because it's way too detailed. And it's using that as a source of context to make a completely separate call, not to the search engine, but to our Palm 2 API for text processing called text Bison. So in this case, I'm using the results of the search as a source of information, similar to what Ty did, except he had it pasted in the screen as a source of information to get an answer to a question. So let's ask a question that is in some way related to crypto firms engaging with developers. And again, we'll see if the tool tolerates my lack of spelling. It should, because it's still going to be able to render some semantic capabilities. Okay. I'm not sure if Polygon is popular with gaming. Can't find it. Let's try it again. And it could be my typing. Okay, so it knows what Polygon is. It knows what it's used for. Had a little trouble with my question on whether or not it's popular for gaming. So let's switch back to a search again. Try a different search and try latest crypto news about and so I get another summary up here. It gets some details about protocols. It's grabbing these, I can tell by, I've seen this before, looking under the covers, I know where this information is coming from. I didn't ask for the annotations here on the summary. It gets a little clunky, but let's go back and try a slightly different query about a follow-up query, more or less. So I'll leave enterprise search, go to conversational search. What is Polygon's governance model? And we get a good answer, Polygon's new governance model. So we can see that in this case, the response came from not this summary, but it must have come from information somewhere else. And that's the information that I've got basically hidden in the background, buffered up. So I'll do one more search. So layer 2 has the most active developers. Going to the state of Polygon, report, Polygon's leading, blah, blah, blah. Also had the most active gamers of any chain in Q1 2023. And I'll ask one follow-up question, but I want the follow-up question to be narrowed to content associated with the previous query. How does Polygon interact with developers? And we see we get a pretty rich answer. And if you'll notice, there's no way this is a summary from the internal language model, because that has a maximum of 5 sentences. There's a lot more than 5 sentences here. And that's because this was generated by a separate and independent call to the PalmTube model that I control, that doesn't require or impose a particular limit on the summary. So if there's any questions, let me know. If you want to see what's actually under the covers here, when I said there was hidden information stuck in that buffer, I can do that. Otherwise, I'll stop and move on to the next presenter.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. And let me just share back here. We actually have a question. What we'll do, we'll do the Q&A at the end, because demos can take time, right? Yeah, we have a couple of questions. We'll do that at the end. So that was enterprise search. That was the first demo, right? For the first use case. Okay, now the next one we want to talk about, the next use case, is around customer service. support, and what we call enhanced virtual assistant. So now this is definitely a customer-facing application, and really you can see that as the evolution of virtual agents, bots, or assistants as we've gotten used to them. Right? With LLM-powered virtual agents, now we take this to the next level, and we allow customers to interact in a more natural way. Right? And then the assistant can as well transact for you. So this is, if you like, the chat mode of LLM, and a continuation of what Jim started to demo. The next use case is content discovery. And again, Jim started to demo this a little bit, but here on the right-hand side, we see like an example application for this. There's a really great demo, by the way, that we share with you that talks about this, a recorded demo. So to think about this in terms of Web3, maybe we can think about like a crypto trading research platform, where as an analyst, right, once you use that crypto trading research platform that's powered by LLM and Gen AI, as you start your day, you get a summary of what happened in the news related to your crypto portfolio. Right, so you can dig in on specific things and be really laser focused on what matters, as opposed to go and look for anything and spend more time there. Think of what you see right on the right hand side, like a production grade application that would be built based on what Jim demoed, and that's really for analysts, non-technical users. But that's not all, right? Very quickly, you really want to get into, based on the findings, based on the insights you get from that, probably you want to trade, right? You want to trade crypto, right? Maybe you want to develop an algo trading strategy. And that's when we get into developer efficiency, which is our next use case, right? And here we are talking about AI-assisted development, arguably the number one use case for Web3 across the board, right? We have developers, builders, and you may have heard of Cody. So Cody is Google Cloud's foundation model, right, for code, for developer efficiencies. And the offering from Google is called Duet AI for Google Cloud. So that's where you get access to this capability from within the IDE or the code editor. I think you are all very familiar with what this does, but let me just touch on 4 things here. The first one would be like inline code completion, right? You've probably seen those things. The second one, boilerplate code generation based on a specific prompt. Third one would be documentation, code explanation, and really going beyond documentation and really having a little bit of a conversation, right? This is where like chatbots can answer code-related questions. And the fourth one, and that's really where the Duet AI for Google Cloud plays into, is that it gives you code security guardrails. So, for example, it can find vulnerable dependencies that you have in your code and suggest fixes for you. So that was the developer efficiency use case. Now I want to tee up the next demo that Megha is going to show. But before we get there, and this is going to be our most technical demo, right? So I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Before I pass it on to Megha, I'm just going to set the stage a little bit. So as an enterprise, and we've seen a number of use cases here, right? So as an enterprise, you will rely on multiple LLMs, right? Multiple models to support multiple use cases, right? And then what Megha is going to show today is, how can you select the optimal model for a given query? So with that said, Megha, take it away.
Thank you, Bertrand. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So let me go ahead.
And introduce yourself as well, please.
Yes. So my name is Megha Bhardwaj. I am an AI machine learning specialist within Google Cloud. I've been here about 3 years, and in these 3 years, we've been working closely with financial services customers, building solutions um, on our platform. So happy to show you this demo today. So I have a notebook, a Jupyter Lab notebook set up in our Vertex AI platform. Vertex AI is our unified machine learning platform on Google Cloud, and it lets you, do prototyping, build applications on our platform. So in this notebook, I'm going to show you three things. As Bertrand mentioned, the first part of the demo is how do you dynamically select a model based on a user input or prompt. So as you know, Google has made available PaLM 2 family of models on the Google Cloud platform. And these family of models include text generation, code generation, and chat, which is dialogue type models. So the text model is also capable of doing classification. So you can actually use a text Bison model to classify a user input and determine what's the most appropriate model for this use case. So if the user is trying to generate code, it can classify that user input as suitable for a coding model, versus if somebody is trying to summarize a conversation, it'll tell you that text Bison is the right model. Or if somebody is trying to have a conversation with a particular context, it would recommend the chat Bison model. So that's the first part. The second part is our LLMs are integrated with LangChain, which is an open source platform to build applications using LLM. And one of the things you can do there is use router chains to create a chain, basically dynamically select a chain given a user input. So for example, if you have an LLM application where a user is entering an input and you want to format that as a particular prompt template before you pass it on to the LLM. You can use it using router chain, where depending on the user input, you construct the right prompt and then you pass it to the LLM to make sure you get the best response back from the LLM. The last bit is integration with BigQuery. So here you will see how you can go from like a plain text or an idea to building or generating the SQL code to fetch data based on that sentence, and then actually query that data from BigQuery using the SQL command that the LLM gave you. So those are the three parts of the demo. So I'll just walk you through this notebook and how to do that. So the first part is we are going to initialize the LLM with our text Bison model, and this model is going to help classify a user input into the right model type. So here is the prompt that will help classify your input. And so if a summarization task, the classification should be text model. If it's code generation, it's going to be the code Bison. And if it's, it also sort of, there's a catch-all, right? If there's something else, it'll go into the unknown category. So you construct the prompt, and then the user input I have is I want to basically write a SQL query from an open source crypto data set in BigQuery to get the average gas prices, right? So I'm going to run my prompt using LangChain, and I'm going to pass this sentence. So once I do that, and I see, so it basically, once I run the chain, it gives me code Bison as the appropriate model to for this particular use case, right? So what I can do next is I can initialize my model with this particular my LLM with this particular model type, and then move on to the next step, which is actually generating the SQL query based on this input. So to generate the SQL query, I have built it using the router chain paradigm, and there are a few different templates that I have defined. So my router chain can do all these different things. It can summarize text. There's a template for summarization. If there's a math type question, it can do that. And the way the prompt is structured is for the LLM to do a step-by-step explanation, right? So it says you're good at answering math questions, and you're able to break down hard problems into components and then solve it. So we will see an example of a math problem and how it does it step by step. It can do sentiment analysis, and it can also do SQL code generation. So I build this template, and then I, using my router chain invocation, for the first input that I pass is summarize the state of Polygon ecosystem, right? So let's see what happens. So when I run this chain, it tells me that it's running the summarization template, because that's what this task is. The input is summarize the state of the ecosystem, and then it starts this chain and gives me a summarization of that, which looks pretty good. The next task that I'm going to do is running it with this input, which says calculate the area of an equilateral triangle. And this is like a math problem, and so it does correctly classify that as that, and it takes that input and it actually tells me step by step how do I calculate the area of an equilateral triangle. And then I ask a very straightforward question: what's the name of the type of cloud that rains? And it gives me like a one-liner with the correct name. And then the main part is I want to generate the SQL query. So I pass the same statement based on this public open source data set, generate me a SQL query that gives the average gas price using a particular timestamp within that table. So it identifies that as a SQL code template. It takes that input and it then generates the SQL query, right? For this particular input. So what I do is I parse the string out and I get the SQL query. And then in the last part of the demo, LangChain also has integration with BigQuery. I have a typo here. So you can actually use the BigQuery data loader to load this SQL query and run it against BigQuery. So in this part of the demo, it basically runs this query against BigQuery and then gives me the average gas price from BigQuery. So that's pretty much it. It basically shows you how you can go from a sentence to generating code and running that code. This is not a full demo of Cody. Cody has, it can work with a lot of different programming languages. We also have Duet AI, which can be integrated into a notebook experience where, you can also generate code here using that extension, or you can also integrate that extension within VS Code and other surfaces. So this is not a full Cody demo, but just a demonstration of how you can use LLMs to do a variety of tasks and also be able to identify the right models and build the right prompts based on user input.
Thank you so much, Megha. And last time on the webinar, we covered those BigQuery public crypto data sets. So if you want to learn more about this and what we have there, you can listen to the recording. Let me just go and share again on my end here. And then we have, and again, Megha was showing Vertex AI Jupyter notebooks here. We have one more use case, and then we're going to the, we're gonna get home. So last but not least, right, the creative use case, content generation, creative. Here we are talking about image and video generative AI. Well, we're no longer into just text, right? So we get into here we get into NFTs, right? When we are in Web3, we are talking NFTs. The foundation model from Google is called Imagen and is made available via Vertex AI. So in the same platform that we showed before, right, where Ty was in the console, you can get access to this model. Examples for us, you own an NFT and you want to create new images, right, in the same style as the NFT. Another example, you want to generate new pictures or new videos with your NFT as the subject in these creations, right? So some of the things you can do with the tool today, you can generate new images, right, based on a text prompt. You can edit an image, right, based on a text prompt. You can generate captions for existing images, or you can fine-tune a model for a specific subject that's yours. So that's the last use case. So at this point, we are done with demo. And now Adrian is going to tie everything you've heard today and take us home.
Cool, thank you. So yes, my name is Adrian Hunter. I'm a customer engineer on the digital assets team for Google Cloud. Tiny bit of background around my experience in the space. I started out early in like 2011, 12. I've done everything from node hosting to helping launch protocols. Had a lot of involvement in this space. And so when I had the chance to join this team, it didn't take long, right? So let's go ahead and kick off with just a quick overview. And I think to start, I wanted to first talk a little bit about our family of models. Going from left to right, the key is that all of this starts with the same LLM architecture. This underlines everything in the center column, from Bard and MakerSuite to MedPalm and SecPalm, which are focused more on the medical use cases or security-related use cases. So each of these use cases are different, but use the same underlying architecture, just trained on different data, right? So then you get over to the right box. Once you're in Vertex, you get to choose the right model for the right job, matching size and performance versus cost. You'll notice we have chosen to name our models after different animals. Some people ask me this question. Really, this just helps you identify the size of the model that you're using, unicorn being the largest and gecko being the smallest. And then, of course, we have different versions because we're constantly iterating. Google's constantly releasing new updates. And I think that's the major key and benefit here is the fact that you have our knowledge and expertise and our tenor in this space driving all of these initiatives, right? So that's enough of this. Let's jump over to the overall cloud AI portfolio, and we'll go ahead and start at the bottom. So there you've got our GPUs, TPUs. So this is like where all the magic is happening on that base level inside of Google Cloud, right? This is purpose-built silicon that's managing all of the machine learning efforts and everything else that's driving everything with generative AI, et cetera. Above this, you have Vertex AI, which we saw a little bit of today. This is our end-to-end machine learning platform. It's got the model garden. Ty touched on this a little bit, but I'll just mention this is where all of Google's models are. We also have open source models, third parties, right? So you've got a plethora of models to choose from, and this is really where you're going to drive efficiency because you don't want to just use the largest model. It's not one size fits all. You have to have the right model for the right use case versus the costs that are driving those, the consumption of this. So this is great. Generative AI Studio, we saw, so I don't need to get into that, but rapid development, rapid deployment, then you can kick over all of that work into an API. So if you're a developer, you can rapid develop in the studio, start using the API, build this into your sandbox environment and production environments, right? Above this, we have Generative AI App Builder. We saw incredible demos today. This is really cool, like enterprise search. I wish we had a whole hour just to talk about it. Maybe we'll have to talk about that, Bertrand. But yeah, so I think this is pretty well summed up. And then above this, we have just your business user use cases like Duet AI for Google Workspace. The example I like to use is like Gmail, right? If I get an email and I want to respond, I can auto-generate a response. Don't tell my boss Gmail's doing all my work for me. But this covers all of this. Document AI is another one I want to highlight. There's a lot of cookie cutter use cases you don't need generative AI technology for that are pre-existent in this, given the fact that we've had products in this space for a very long time. Let's go talk a little bit about the architecture, because I think this is really where I tend to start. Like if I'm talking to a security team, if I'm talking to an AI practitioner, what good is it if you're building all this stuff with all this cool stuff if you can't answer the security related or the intellectual property related questions first? So the way we're going to read this slide is actually from right to left, and we're going to start with the Google Cloud Central Hosting. So this is where the large foundational models live, and I think it's important to note that the LLMs are stateless in this, right? So frozen model weights, nothing is changing here. And this is segregated from your tenant. So if you look at the middle box, imagine this is like your project in GCP. there's a clear segregation between where the stuff lives. So all your content, all your data, all the inference that you're driving through any of the fine tuning you're doing is still living inside of your own tenant, your own project. So all the security parameters you have in place and all this stuff, it's no different than any other project that you have at GCP. But the key is over on that Google Cloud Central Hosting piece, right? All the data is encrypted in flight when you're interacting with these. So like you encrypt the data, you've got the prompt, kicks over, you're gonna get some inference that maybe occurs in Vertex AI with an adapter layer, for example. But it's only processing the input to generate output. It doesn't store customer data or parameters. It doesn't use customer data to improve the models. This includes customer specific parameters, right? So like when you're talking about intellectual property and the prompts you're using, like you don't want us knowing that stuff, and we don't know that stuff because it's totally segregated. And that's it, right? So once you have this, then it's basically really simple to fundamentally understand like how this is all coming together. And I think that's where I'll leave it. I saw a lot of questions in Q&A. We probably want to jump to that given that we've got 10 minutes left. Yeah.
Absolutely, and we'll stay on this page, right, just for everyone to follow what we're getting into the Q&A section, but we'll go back to that page, and that was kind of how we designed the webinar. We knew there was going to be interaction questions on this specific page, right? So we have a couple of questions from David. Maybe we start, Adrian, you touched on it, but we start with this one, right? Who owns the output of the LLM? Right? If we use it to help write code, do we own the code output, assuming it isn't a direct copy and paste of previously written code? Does Google have any copyright claim on the output?
We don't even see the output, right? We don't have, like, even as a cloud engineer, I have no access to the prompts you're using or anything like this in a Vertex environment. With Cody, maybe Jim can chime in, but my expectation is that all of this is working the same way, based on everything I've seen.
With Cody, if the model has a recitation checker, and if the recitation checker thinks that a large chunk of the code is associated with code it saw it training, it will flag that and let you know. But no training code comes from projects that are not quote unquote friendly open source licenses.
Does that make sense, David? All right. Very good. The next question from David as well, because it's related, and then we get to Evan's question. Are there any protections against accidental inclusion of sensitive data? Right, so you see why it goes to the right here, right, to the large language model, right? Is there a way that we can prevent that sensitive data from being fed back into the model?
Well, I think I touched on that a bit, right? Like there's absolutely none of this actually. We don't actually see that, right? Like these are segregated environments.
Yeah. So there's two questions, I think. Can Google see it? No. Which is separate from what happens if you accidentally or not put in a telephone number, which could be PII. One way to protect against all of that is to put your inputs through a layer of DLP, data loss protection, which can be tuned to identify PII in any block of text you give it, and either redact it, obfuscate it, scramble it, etc. It's a little bit of extra work, but it would give you additional confidence that something that might be PII is not being passed around.
Makes sense, David? Okay, cool. I see you nodding. All right, very good. The next question in the Q&A is from Evan, and that's one for you, Jim. Is enterprise search only looking for results within the corpus of documents, or can it also reference the underlying LLM's training data, or possibly be connected to traditional Google search as well?
Today, and to some degree, it is focused on the data in the corpus. There is ongoing work to ensure that by default, it only looks at the corpus. Once in a great while, right now, it occasionally takes something from training and it will tell you. But the goal is to make the corpus the trusted source of information. And should it, for whatever reason, end up even looking at something it learned in training, to provide a citation telling you that it took it from training. That's a hard problem to solve, but the primary goal is to give you that protection. I would say if you want something that can first look at your corpus via search, and then potentially, if the results aren't what you want, look elsewhere, that's an opportunity where a technology like LangChain works really well, where you kind of have a hunt, right? Hunt here, my primary source should be search. If I can't find a good answer, I have a secondary search or a secondary source of information. Does that help answer your question?
All right. Thank you, Jim. Okay, yep. All right, very good, very good. So we answered the other question that was in the chat, and I see no other questions in the Q&A. Any other comments, questions, feedback, gestures?
You telling me I had 4 more minutes to actually get through all my content? I was talking so fast. Okay.
Yeah, this is a lot, right? We know we covered a lot, right? Like there's a lot, right? We showed you demos, right, related to these different products and offerings. We talked about foundation models, like specific offerings, etc. Yes, this is being recorded, right? We're going to post it. We have a Google Cloud YouTube playlist called Google Cloud Web3 playlist. So we'll make sure that we share that with you. Yes, it's going to be recorded. Any other comments or questions? Yes, start the learning journey. Absolutely. So what I found really useful, and we'll share that as well in the resources and as part of the YouTube recording. There is a GitHub repository that Google Cloud Gen AI, and that's where I started, right? It gives you example notebooks, it gives you example like prompt designs, etc., like what I started with, etc. And then you can go through and gradually learn more about all of these things. There is also, like if you follow me on LinkedIn, you see that I posted recently, there is a quest on Google Cloud Skills, like what used to be called like Quick Labs, and more. So there's a quest that you can take right on Google Cloud Learning that is going to cover generative AI. That includes lectures and hands-on as well. So yeah, that's very, very good. So that I found this super useful. All right. So I think it's time to close this. Don't hesitate to reach out, right? portierandcloud@google.com. I want to thank you very, very much for your participation and for attending the webinar. And we'll see you in September.